such an honor to be in front of everyone and to be here in HouseCall Auditorium and introducing the first public medical lecture in the metaverse. I am Naviculara. Some of you might know me. Some of you might also know me as Linda. I'm also Dr. Linda Civarelli in real life. So I have a lot of different names, but I am just honored and thrilled to be here. I stand before you today as a dreamer, right? You don't always think about doctors as dreamers, but I think really in a lot of ways we are. We dream about when we choose this profession, we dream about alleviating suffering. We dream about making the human experience better in some way. And that's my dream for House Call. My dream is to harness this technology, this next expansion of how we interact with technology through virtual reality, augmented reality, um, to to make the human experience better, to create a place where people can better understand their health, a place where we can use the magic, immersive, and interactive virtual reality to better explain and educate everybody. We want to create a place where people can find and connect with healthcare providers in new and exciting ways, like this, right? I mean, the first public medical lecture in the metaverse. None of this would have been possible without the help of countless creators, many of whom are here today. And you're too many to possibly name, but there are some that I absolutely must name. The first is E.M. Halsey over here in the audience. E.M. Halsey was one of the very first people that I shared this concept with, and was immediately a we've got to do this. This is great. I want to be a part of this. And her talents with all kinds of building are just, I can't even begin to tell you. So when you go check out the anatomic structures that you see in our worlds, they are largely thanks to E.M. Halsey. I'd also like to thank, in particular, Ashes to Ashes. Where are you, Ashes? There you are over there. Ashes has been an incredible collaborator, creating a really terrific game in our dermatology world, among countless other things, making all of this possible. Her endless talents and just, amazing vibe is awesome. And I'm honored to have you on the team. Last but definitely not least, Melissa, Pigeon number 12. I think you're here. I don't. Oh, there you are. There you are. Hi, hey Pigeon. Your just tireless support of this has been amazing. So I want to thank you, and of course to our host, Oculus 410, for making this all possible. Today you guys are going to witness history. Like I said, this is the first public medical lecture in the metaverse, and you can say that you're here for it. I'm presenting today Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. She's a pioneer and a trailblazer. She's the first woman board certified in urogynecology in the United States of America. She's triple board certified, and she's like no novice to forging a path. So we are just honored to have her here. She's going to be talking today about women's health. You are what you eat. And that's what my teenagers would say, facts. That's what they say. So listen, after the lecture, in our connected worlds, you should go through the House Call Hub, play Survive the Sun in our dermatology world, play Beat the Fungus in podiatry world, and then visit the first medical practices in the metaverse. You can visit real medical practices. There's Delaware Valley Dermatology, Brandywine Podiatry, and of course the virtual practice space of Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. So again, thank you everyone for being here, and I'd like to turn it over and introduce Dr. Greenleaf.
Still getting used to moving around in here. Not like many of you guys. I'm really new in the metaverse. So thank you for welcoming me here. So I want to start out with raise your hand if any of you have a sister. All right. How about anybody have a female coworker? All right, I got one for you. Who here has a mother? All right. Well, then you know somebody who's suffered in silence because 80% of women will experience a pelvic health issue at some point in their lives. Yet, 65% of women are uncomfortable using the terminology to discuss what's down there, and therefore they can't ask for help and they suffer alone. But this is not just a women's issue. This is an everybody's issue because when women suffer, everybody around them suffers. For example, moms, if they're not feeling well and they're cranky, their children suffer. Women's relationships suffer, and also work performance can suffer. So this affects everybody's lives. So we're going to take a look at a couple examples. For example, Tony and Terry, newlyweds, desperately trying to get pregnant but having difficulty. And then we have postmenopausal Deborah getting recurrent urinary tract infections and blaming her relationship issues on her hormones. And then on the other side, we have Karen. She's the upwardly mobile executive suffering from chronic pelvic pain, but trying to hide it from her colleagues because she's trying to get ahead in her career. Yet she's staying up late nights, living on a diet of Tanqueray and takeout. What do all three of these cases have in common? They have something that each and every one of us here has in common: the fact that we're not alone, that we're here because of tiny beings. I'm not talking about aliens. What I'm talking about is the fact that we have a microbiome. The microbiome is the small bacteria, organisms, yeast that live on our body and within our body. Our microbiome in our mouth is different than that of our skin, that's different than our gut, and different than our reproductive tract. Yet, it's these areas that, if they're not healthy, our whole body will suffer. And so, therefore, how do we help this microbiome? And what does this microbiome even have to do with us? Well, let's take a look at things. There are two areas that affect our health. Number one, stress, and the other one is diet. But we'll talk about stress first. For example, we were developed with an autonomic nervous system, or a sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, that keeps us healthy. It keeps us alive. Our parasympathetic system is our rest, digest, and reproduction. And it only happens when we're relaxed and chill. And this is what helps us heal. Our sympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, is our fight, flight, or fright. This keeps us healthy when there is a threat. And how it works is, when we were cave people walking across the savannah and all of a sudden a lion jumps out, we don't want to wait for our brains to kick in and go, what is that? Is that a lion? Oh, hi, kitty, kitty. No, we want our bodies to kick in and make decisions for us to keep us alive and safe before we even think about it. So that's the same system. Like, if you ever put your hand on a hot stove or something hot and your arm jerks away before you even think about it, that's the sympathetic nervous system. And it keeps us alive, but it does so at the detriment of healing, reproduction, and digestion. So, what does this have to do with pelvic health, women's health, health in general? Well, the fact is that nowadays our lions come in different forms, not just jumping out of the bushes. Lions come in forms of chronic stress, emotional stress, work stress, financial stress, even the stress of chronic illness. And so learning to decrease our stress is the only thing that's going to help us to heal and these other digestion and in our uh, medical conditions, hormone balance. So now this brings us, well, if our hormonal systems or our stress hormones are being triggered, that affects our digestion. And how does digestion affect our health? Well, more than you would figure, because we are what we eat. So let's take a look, for example, at what happens in the digestive system. Yay. So, what happens is that food that we eat, inflammatory foods, insecticides and pesticides in our food system cause inflammation, and even sometimes our medications, they can all cause inflammation in our intestines, and our intestines are very protective. And what will happen is when we're exposing our body to these inflammatory toxins, what can happen is our nice cells that are normally touching each other become swollen and move apart. And what happens then is we develop something called leaky gut syndrome, where now insecticides and pesticides in the food that we eat, inflammatory foods, medications can now all leak into our body, into our blood system, and can cause other health problems. I could pretty confidently stand here and say that 90% of medical conditions today are either related to gut imbalances with bacteria and inflammation, or either made worse by gut bacteria imbalances. And so let's go back and look at those cases I was telling you about. So we have Tony and Terry, the young newlyweds desperately trying to get pregnant, and it's just not working. Well, if we look at Tony's history, 10 years before, or for the prior 10 years, she was taking oral birth control, which is a wonderful tool, but unfortunately, it has some effects on the body. It can throw off the bacteria in the gut and therefore lead to this leaky gut syndrome. That acts as a lion to the body. And so the body then realizes that it's under stress and will dampen the hormones of reproduction. In addition, the hormones in birth control will thin out the lining of the reproductive tissue. That will throw off the microbiome of the women's parts, and therefore, the body will actually sense this. This is another lion for the body. The body will sense this as being out of kind of out of whack. And what'll happen is the body will say, hey, this is not the ideal time to be reproducing. Because remember, back when we were in the savannah and that lion was jumping out, it's not the time to be eating your hamburger, digesting your hamburger, or trying to make a baby. It's time to get away. So the body is sensing this inflammation and dampening all hormones and products of reproduction. So then we have Deborah. She was the postmenopausal woman who was getting the recurrent urinary tract infections and blaming her relationship issues on the fact that she was postmenopausal. When in fact, in her case, this goes back to the hormones, that the hormones of the reproductive tract, when they go low, it will thin out women's tissue and the tissue is not actively growing. Lactobacillus is the healthy bacteria that actually lives in a woman's body and keeps us healthy. And it does so by actually living off of our dead tissues, which sounds kind of gross and a little bit alien, but we need this to stay healthy and stay alive. And so, once again, if the hormones are low, the lactobacillus loses its food source and dies. And there's that feedback loop to the brain that tells the brain, like, let's dampen the sex drive. And so, once again, it may not be completely a hormonal issue, it could be a microorganism issue. And then also, this is why she's at higher risk of recurrent urinary tract infections because of the proximity of all these organs. And then we had the other example, Karen, who was the executive that was suffering from pelvic pain and not trying to hide it from her coworkers, and she was living on Tanqueray and takeout and staying up late nights in front of her computer. Well, she had multiple lions attacking her system because she had the diet, the takeout food, the alcohol, all causing inflammation in her body, and then also staying up late night. We don't get enough sleep, and therefore that puts a stressor on the body. All of these stressors adding to inflammation, pain and inflammation, and it becomes a circular problem. So, what are the simple things that we can do that can make not only a big difference in women's health, but in each and every one of our health? Is number one, decreasing stress. That's a little bit difficult, more difficult. But the simpler thing is look at our diet, cutting out inflammatory foods. Well, what foods tend to be inflammatory? Sugar happens to be one of the number one inflammatory foods that's out there. In fact, not only is it inflammatory, but it's addictive. They did a study with rats and they gave the rats sugar and then they gave the rats morphine. And then they gave the rats the choice to choose between the two. And the rats went for the sugar each and every time because sugar stimulates a portion of our brain that is the same as a drug addiction. Other foods that can be inflammatory for people include dairy for some people, gluten or wheat containing foods, and also processed foods like our snack foods and and fast foods. So the things that we should be eating is what we evolved to eat. Is we evolved to eat things that grow, things that fly, things that swim, and things that walk. And eating whole foods is the way our body heals. And unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but Twinkies don't grow on trees. So we need to get more whole foods into our diet to heal our gut, to heal our bodies, to help with reproduction and hormones and chronic disease. In addition, when we were cave people, we didn't have refrigeration. We weren't like walking out of the caves and going, let me go over here to the refrigerator. No, we were eating more foods with bacteria. And that was replenishing the healthy bacteria in our bodies. And so the way we can do that in modern times is eating more fermented foods, such as kombucha, sauerkraut, kimchi. And then last but not least, we don't get enough fiber in our diet. We need about 25 grams of fiber in our diet to be healthy, not just for our health, but it's the food source of the bacteria that's in our gut. And another reason why we need a healthy gut microbiome is because the healthy bacteria in our intestines not only help with digestion, but we need it for vitamin production. And our 80% of our immune system is made in our gut. So if our gut is not healthy, we're more likely to be sick. And 95% of our serotonin, our happy hormone, is made in our gut. So that if our gut is off, we're more prone to anxiety, depression, and even pain conditions. So, what I find it so incredibly interesting is that in 440 BC, Hippocrates was quoted as saying, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Now, whether he actually said this, we don't know for certain, but somebody did, and somebody said it a long time ago. And I find it amazing that in 2022, we're just figuring this out when this has been known all along. So many of us have heard that we are what we eat. And I have to say that this is incredibly true that we put healthy things in our body, we will be healthy. We put junk in our body, unfortunately, we will be junk. So, what I just wanted to ask each and every one of you is I'm not saying give up unhealthy foods. We have to live, we have to enjoy ourselves, but just try 80% of the time living a healthy diet and healthy lifestyle. 20% of the time you can enjoy yourself. If we just shoot for that 80/20, then we're ahead of the game. So next time you pick up something to eat, just think about, are you nourishing your body? Are you entertaining your body? Or are you feeding a food addiction? And then that just gives you the to stop and think mindful what we're putting in our mouths. So this is how we are what we eat. And I like to thank everybody here today for taking the time to. Hmm. Can you hear me now? I know it said that. Okay. All right. So I don't know what part. Yeah, at one point I got a message saying that nobody could hear me, even though my mic said it was on. So, but anyway, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to listen to me talk. And if anybody has any questions, please come up to the mic now. I'd love to answer your questions.
Ooh. Alrighty. So thank you, Dr. Greenleaf. We really appreciate it. I see we have some people already lined up in the chat. We have some questions in the chat as well. So we'll let the people here start us off and then we'll transition to some people who are live. So in the chat, make sure you leave those questions. And for now, let's go ahead and start us off with pigeon number 12. Go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right. So thank you for your everything that you shared today. I have a question. What about food proportions? Does it affect the health as well, and how so?
Sure. I mean, definitely, food proportions are do play a role because, you could, you know, calories are calories, but at the same time, they're not necessarily calories. And what I mean by that is the same amount of calories of chocolate cake is not going to act on the body the same as the same amount of calories of broccoli. But at the same time, you could still overdo a good thing. So too much of a good thing is still bad. So you could theoretically overeat broccoli and it's going to, act on just where body's going to store it as fat, um and but it's not necessarily going to be inflammatory. It's, if we're eating co- cookies and chocolate
Linda.
and
Hey,
cake,
Linda.
that's going to have a bigger
Okay.
effect on our body from an inflammatory
You're muted.
standpoint.
If we only have one
I see.
question in the
Thank you.
chat, do you want to just wrap it up
Yep.
early because there are not going to be many people here? Okay.
All right,
Can
I
you
see we
hear
have another.
me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, this is not a question, but if you're ever dealing with something sad and you start eating bad,
Oh
just
my.
remember that you're still a good person on the inside,
Oh my god.
and that when people judge you, that doesn't mean that
Did you hire him?
you're a bad person. That just means that they don't like you because they judge you. So just remember that if someone judges you because of your body, it's them, not you. Keep on being the same person you are because you have to be yourself at some point. Bye.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I don't know if that was a question, but that was by far the best statement I've heard. For those of y'all at home, I don't know if you can top that question, but we do have a question in the
Yeah.
chat. Please continue to drop those questions in the chat. And again, here in the auditorium, please line up if you do have questions. I imagine that you're okay with pretty much anything, any specific topics that you specialize in that they can ask.
Pretty much try me with anything. If I can't answer it, I'll say I don't know.
Alrighty. So then, for the sake of our people at home who are asking questions, I do have a question from the chat. This one is about, you mentioned sugar. So, is stevia or
Yeah.
sucralose a safer alternative to sugar? And what are your thoughts on that? And is there a better solution, obviously, than anything's better than just consuming sugar, I imagine?
Sure. Here's an interesting. We evolved to be attracted to sweet foods because the more ripe a food was, the sweeter it was. So that's why as humans we are drawn to things that are sweet. So, given the choice, I right now, who knows tomorrow, you never know, the new research might be out, but right now stevia and monk fruit are my favorite sweeteners. I try to stay away from artificial sweeteners. Not a big fan of sucralose, but stevia and monk fruit are my favorite ones so far. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the information. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Betsy. Any
Nice to meet
pointers that you
you.
have? Yeah, nice to meet you too. Any pointers that you might have for, let's say, men that are getting older, let's say, as they approach, let's say, being an older adult?
Yeah, so just the way I talked a lot about women's health, but the same goes for men. So stress can lower hormone production, and inflammatory foods can have the same effect on men's hormone production. So it's the same problem. Really, for both of us, men and women, exercise is one of the best things, and especially strength training, that we can do for not only our hormones, our well-being, but our metabolism, because we start losing 8% of our muscle mass every decade of our lives after the age of 30. And so unfortunately, that does have a great, effect on our bodies when it comes to our metabolism. And, we all start to kind of gain a little weight as we get older, and that's one of the reasons. But just staying active, stress reduction, meditation is great if you can, get a hobby, but also making sure you incorporate uh, exercise and healthy living, which is also shown to. I just did a lecture last weekend on anti-aging, and there we have these hormones that are made in our body that are very anti-aging, called sirtuins and NAD, and they're produced when we exercise. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you for that question, Shock and Awesome. We got Navicular. Go ahead and unmute, and then go ahead and ask your question.
There we go. I pushed the button. It didn't happen. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Ooh.
All right, can you still hear me? I'm really clearly bad at this. Everybody can hear me? Okay, good. Can you hear? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so thank you so much for taking my question, and of course for doing this lecture. One of the things that my patients are always asking me is like, if there was like one recommendation, like what's the one piece of advice that that you want me to know, doc? What's the one thing, the takeaway? So I guess that's my question for you is what's the sort of one big takeaway message that you want people to know? Uh-oh. I wonder, she seemed to disappear.
We may have had a headset die. Let's check in on Dr. Greenleaf. So in the meantime, I'll get Dr. Greenleaf back in the chat. Please leave those questions. This is your time. If you want to learn something, if you have something to ask, please go ahead and put those down in the chat below. We appreciate everybody being here, especially those who are in the auditorium. Make sure you share out this stream. Make sure you follow HouseCall VR, and you can even find Dr. Betsy Greenleaf on Facebook if you want to follow all of her socials as well. So, as I said, please leave those questions in the chat. We'll make sure that we can get all your questions answered. Plus, if you're here in the audience, step up to the microphone. We'll be able to get some of those questions asked, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the stream. Dr. Betsy Greenleaf is back. She's going to be taking questions in the auditorium and live in the chat. So make sure that you're leaving those questions in the chat. So we'll take it back over to Dr. Greenleaf.
Oh, can't hear me? Oh no. How about now? Yes.
All right. Do we have
There we
anything in the
go.
auditorium? Otherwise, I have a few questions in the chat. So please feel free to line up. While we're getting people to line up, Dr. Greenleaf, we do have a question in the chat. Someone who has lupus wants to know, since they have gut upset stomach often, is there anything that you would recommend they eat, considering that with lupus they're always having gut issues and upset stomach? Any food you'd recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, basically sticking with whole foods, and whole foods, like I said, are naturally things that occur in the environment. Now, here's the interesting thing is that we're saying that as a generalization, but there is actually food sensitivity testing that you can have done at your doctor's. I would tell people to find like an integrative or functional medicine doctor that can do this food sensitivity testing, because sometimes we, even though we're eating things that are healthy, maybe our system doesn't like it. And so I have seen some, and I'm not saying everybody's situations are different. That's why you got to check with your own healthcare doctors. But I have seen some people over the years that have developed autoimmune or worsening of autoimmune conditions because of food sensitivities. So that is something that I would recommend looking into. I can tell you a story about things that are typically healthy. Like when I look at protein powders, typically pea protein tends to be better for a good amount of people. But I had a patient once who we took her off the whey protein, which is milk based, and we put her on pea protein, and her symptoms were getting worse. And I'm like, scratching my head, like, what's going on? And finally, we did the food sensitivity testing, and lo and behold, she had a food sensitivity to peas. So even though I tell you, eat these healthy foods, there still may be some underlying issues with your own system. And I mean, I like testing because it makes it easy, but there's other ways you can do just what's called an elimination diet and keep a food diary where if you write down your symptoms and write down what you're eating, you can kind of track things. So, cutting out some of the inflammatory foods or just eating certain types of foods for a while and then adding a different food into your diet and then tracking how your symptoms are. So that's another way that you can kind of figure it out without fancy testing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you in the chat for that question. Next up, we'll have Naviculara unmute and ask her question.
All right, I'm going to try it again. Dr. Greenleaf, I don't know. Did you get my question earlier?
Oh, no, I didn't hear any of it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, no, that's okay. What I said was that one of the things that my patients are asking me often is like, what's like the big takeaway message? Like, what should I go home and like tell my wife or my husband that we talked about today? What's like the one thing that you want people to take away from this lecture?
That's a great question. I think the fact that we need to pay more attention and listen to our bodies, and that food is obviously it's a way to nourish our bodies, it's also a way to entertain our bodies, but that we need to look at the way we're eating and look at our food because that's a simple way that we can make a big change in our lives and actually can affect our health, because the inflammation that we see that happens because of this leaky gut or this gut dysbiosis with the bacteria in the gut being imbalance, it can show up in different people in different ways. And some people may show up as worsening of arthritis, and some people may be worsening of their heart disease or their cholesterol, their diabetes, or pelvic pain. So if you're having any kind of medical conditions, look at your diet first. And then, we're living longer and longer than we ever did. And so even if you don't have any kind of health problems, look at what you're putting in your body, because that can make a difference in how you're going to live and how well you're going to enjoy life. So
Hello, Dr. Greenleaf. Can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Hi. Um, so, Dr. Greenleaf, I read a paper and I forget the name of it. It was a Japanese paper based on the percentage of protein compared to other foods we should be bringing in, to our bodies. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the percentage of protein in our diet compared to everything else. And then if it matters if it's animal protein versus amino acids, say from like rice and beans, which gives us a complete protein, should it be, grown based? And then just real quick, what are your thoughts on eggs? We hear that 2 a week and 4 a week as a complete. So just your thoughts on protein and things in general.
Sure. I definitely the American. You hear want to know something interesting I did forgot to mention in my lecture is that the standard American diet spells out the word sad. But which when we think of the standard American diet is, fast food and shakes and fries. And so yeah, definitely as Americans as a whole, and I know I'm speaking to other people, not just from the United States, but being from the United States, I think of this is that we're definitely not eating enough proteins in our diet. So I've seen anywhere from pretty much the basic is for every kilogram of body weight you are, that you should be eating that much protein a day. So, if you don't know how to do the translation between kilograms and pounds, if you just kind of, you know, divide your weight by 2.2, that'll give you your kilograms, and then you should be eating about that much protein a day. I think in men actually that it may be a little bit higher. I think there's so many people around the world that don't eat meat, animal proteins. So I think as long as we're getting those proteins, and even if it's those amino acids, which are, because the proteins are broken down into amino acids, and those are what become the building blocks for our body. So I think as long as you're getting the protein in your body, it probably doesn't make as much of a difference. But then you also have to look at, it's not just what we eat, it's what our food sources are eating. So unfortunately, let's look at cows, for example. Cows were never meant to eat corn. They're not designed to eat corn. And so they get leaky gut because corn to them is an inflammatory food. So they get leaky gut and they get sick. That's why, in the food, our food source, antibiotics being used in these animals is common, because those cows are getting sick because they're getting leaky gut. So the idea is that if our food sources are eating healthier, then if you're eating animal protein, then their meat is going to be healthier for us, because if we eat, if they're inflamed and we're eating them, and then it's going to add to our inflammation too. So I just kind of went off on a tangent, but I hope that answered some questions for you.
Awesome question, Quantum Ethos. Before we go to EM Halsey live in the auditorium, we do have a couple more questions in the chat. So that'll give some people here an opportunity. If you do have questions, go ahead and line up in the queue. So we'll get to you right after these questions in the chat, EM Halsey. So we're looking at the chat, and they have questions about leaky gut syndrome. Are there symptoms? How do you know you have leaky gut syndrome? What do you do to either prevent that leaky gut syndrome from happening in the first place? But how do you know you have it?
That's a very interesting question, because you don't always know that you have it. And even then, in traditional medicine, it's not necessarily considered like a real syndrome, meaning like it's something that we is very commonly talked about in integrative and functional medicine. There are ways. I mean, sometimes you can have symptoms, meaning gastrointestinal symptoms. Some people get bloating, diarrhea, constipation. Like that may be a sign of it. They may feel sick when they eat in certain foods. But some people, it may not show up as that at all. It may show up as other chronic illnesses. It may show up as, like I said, arthritis or headaches or pelvic pain or worsening of another chronic condition. So from our standpoint as physicians, we do have tools that we can test people for this. I know I'll tell you exactly what I tell my patients, because I'm not gonna hold back here when this one. I call it the poop in the box test, because it's a stool test to check for leaky gut. And so there's a number of different laboratories that make these stool tests that actually you can check something for like a level of zonulin. Zonulin is a level in a chemical level in the stool that is an indicator of leaky gut. And then also these stool tests will look at the bacteria that's in the stool. And we know that certain bacteria are associated with more inflammation or autoimmune diseases or even other illnesses. So sometimes you don't necessarily know, other than you may be sick with something else. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that response. And right before we get to EM Halsey, we got one more in the chat. We got some smoothie drinkers in the chat. Any smoothie drinkers here in the auditorium? Fantastic. So we're looking for some healthy smoothie ingredients that'll help with gut health. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes. Oh man. Well, oh my gosh, I can't even know. My good friend of mine, Natalia Levy, just did a video for me that I'm going to be putting in my upcoming Women's Health Summit, but maybe I can get it online another way. But she came up with a smoothie that had a combination of like yogurt and grapefruit in it. But I think like I'll tell you some things that I put in my smoothies, because fiber is definitely a challenging thing for me. So I know that I'm supposed to get more fiber in my diet, and I find it hard to do so. Fiber comes in the form of grains and plant products and vegetables and seeds and nuts. I love chia seeds. Chia seeds are like great because they tend to just bulk up in fluids. So there's also some great like chia pudding recipes out there because you can they just kind of like gelatinize. They pump up, and so that's going to help feed the healthy bacteria in your body. So you can throw those into a smoothie, sneaking in vegetables into your smoothies, however you want to get them, like put them in there. I know I said dairy. Everyone catches me on the dairy thing, and I'm surprised no one's brought it up here. I'd say that dairy's inflammatory, but then I give yogurt a pass. Is because I kind of have mixed emotions about of yogurt. Be Not everybody necessarily has problems with dairy, and so if you're a person that can tolerate dairy, I like yogurt and kefir and all that better because the bacteria in those products are breaking down the milk sugars. So I find that those to be a little bit healthier. So throwing that in there, that's great. There's a couple other products that my my kids love. There's a product called Good Bellies that has like healthy bacteria in it. Sometimes we throw that in the smoothies. But I think, just mixing healthy fruits and vegetables and kind of putting it all together. I Now, people in the juicing world, please don't freak out on me. I like smoothies better than juicing because smoothies, you're putting everything in a blender and you're mixing it all up, so you're getting all the fiber. Where when you juice, you're getting rid of that fiber. You don't keep it. So I would prefer people make smoothies than just juicing. So for the fiber reason. So don't attack me, juicers.
Thank you so much for that answer. And clearly, all of those ingredients don't go in one smoothie. So the goal is to make
No,
a
no.
variety.
Though you know what? I will admit when I've gotten sick before, and do not do this. Like, doctors are the worst patients. I've gotten sick and I'm like, what are the things that help you when you're sick? And I have no joke, and I would not recommend doing this. I have no joke, put garlic and elderberry and vitamin C and everything I could think of that was like helped you when you're sick in a smoothie, and it was the worst thing I think I've ever drank in my life, and I don't think it helped me get any better, but so, but there are, fine combinations. That's the nice thing about the internet now. Like you can find recipes everywhere. So I just, Google recipes constantly. So I am writing a book that will have some recipes in it, but it's not out. So look out for that in the future. So
Awesome. And you can follow Dr. Betsy Greenleaf on social media for when that book does come out.
yes.
Thank you so much for those questions. If you have any more in the chat, please leave them. We're almost out of time. We are definitely going to go to E.M. Halsey for her question. And then anybody else in the auditorium, please come on and step up.
Hi, Dr. Greenleaf. Thank you for being here. This is great. I have a question for you. I see myself as a very healthy, middle-aged female who eats really healthy, but every now and then I crave the cake, I crave the Twinkie. There's got to be a happy medium as far as when should I dig into that chocolate cake or have a candy bar? Is it bad for me to do that?
No, and that's why I always say, you got to give yourself some grace too. We got to live our lives. 80% of the time, if we do things like what good for our body, and 20% of the time we have fun, I think that's a perfect balance. It's interesting when we assign the word bad to a certain food, we're actually kind of it actually backfires, because I will tell you, I've struggled with diet issues my whole entire life. And so interesting to find out, like I love chocolate, and actually chocolate has some really great health properties to it. But let's just say, let me just say chocolate chip cookies, right? If I say, oh, that chocolate chip cookie is bad, I'm never eating a chocolate chip cookie ever again. What actually you're doing subconsciously is you're setting up this reward system in your brain. So now you eat that chocolate chip cookie and you actually boost your dopamine, which is, that dopamine is often boosted in anytime when we do something enjoyable. It can be boosted during with drugs, is unfortunately. But now we've set this thing up where we set this reaction. Our body goes, oh, I'm eating something bad, and like now I'm getting this dopamine rush, and that makes you want to do it more and more and more. So we do have to take away the labels from things that we do to our body and just be like, okay, well, that's not bad. It's just, maybe I shouldn't be eating that as much as I don't want to sit down with the whole thing of chocolate chip cookies like every single night, but rewarding yourself here and there I think is good, and then just balancing it out. I mean, one of the things I try to do is healthy bacteria from fermented foods or probiotics will help eat up some of those bad things. So I might eat some extra like kimchi or sauerkraut or something to balance it out. But like I said, I'm definitely not telling you never eat pizza again or never eat chocolate cake, just in everything in moderation. So,
Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you so much for that question, EM Halsey. If anybody else has any questions, we have 2 more left in the chat. So if you'll indulge us in 2 more questions, Dr. Greenleaf.
Sure.
So we have one general question about coffee and energy drinks. I think a lot of people in the chat and people in this auditorium are pretty hooked on coffee in the morning and energy drinks to get over that hump. What do you suggest, whether it's replacements for those, the moderation in those, how it affects the body is kind of the general consensus, in ways that we can kind of supplement that to get energy?
You got a lot more hours? So I could go off on this one for a while. You know what? Sometimes with the energy drinks, it's not well, first of all, you got to look at the ingredients in the energy drinks. A lot of them contain a lot of sugar. And if they don't contain sugar, then they're containing artificial sweeteners in it, which are not always the healthiest. Um, so sometimes I really want to know why the person is feeling the need to drink these energy drinks, because it actually can be a sign of the body's under stress. Because when we're under stress, that chronic stress I talked about with the lions and the sympathetic nervous system, long term it will affect our adrenal glands, which are little glands above our kidneys and our back that make cortisol. And so if our cortisol is off, um we can have problems with low energy. And so a lot of people will combat that by having energy drinks in the morning, and then their cortisol we body produces cortisol in this curve. It should be very high in the morning, which wakes us up, and then decreases as the day goes on. But when we're under chronic stress, that curve that we should see with our cortisol levels tends to flatten out or even invert, where it's low in the morning and high at night. So people will end up doing energy drinks in the morning, and then they're using alcohol to try to go to sleep at night, which is worsening their cortisol and their hormones. So, I mean, once again, everything in moderation. It's not, you know, there are some research showing good things with caffeine, especially coffee. There's a lot of antioxidants in coffee. Tea is probably your better option. Green tea is probably one of the healthier options because of some of the antioxidants and L-theanine, which is actually relaxing, which is surprisingly in green tea. But I would say, like, are you a person that like just can't get going in the morning and then having issues in the night, or just is your energy staying low all day? Like, there may be an underlying inflammation going on in the body. There may be stress. There's other things that are affecting the hormones in the body and also the cortisol. So I just would be like, kind of question like why why somebody would be drinking that. Um, and really, there's other ways to naturally boost your energy. Exercising in the morning is probably one of the best ways to boost and listen, I'm not an exerciser. Like, I got the same struggles as everybody else. And I am just getting into exercising. So, and exercise doesn't have to be like going to the gym and getting on a treadmill. It could be dancing. It could be going for a walk. It could be doing something. Yeah, see, he's dancing up there. Could be doing something fun. So, just moving your body every day and doing that in the morning. Also, unfortunately, the screens. I mean, we're all on screens right now. Screens and artificial light affect our body and affect our cortisol and our hormone production and our energy levels. And so naturally, we were supposed to go to bed when the sun went down, and we were supposed to wake up when the sun comes up. But unfortunately, we've affected our circadian rhythms with all these artificial lights. So, shutting off, you might not need the energy drink if you could somehow get 8 hours of sleep. I mean, ideally 8 hours is the way to go, but you can't go from sleeping 5 hours and then all of a sudden eight. So I tell everybody, back it off by 15 minutes until you can get into a routine where it's 8 hours, or try to get off those electronics, preferably 4 hours before bedtime, but whatever you can back off, the better. I mean, I've tried to make it a rule myself that I don't go on my computer anymore after dinner. Once dinner comes, that's computer is done, because otherwise I can't sleep. I won't sleep. So, and then you're more likely to get in that cycle of having to do with energy drinks and more and more. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And a little bit of an advantage to our West Coast friends. They got a little bit of time before bed. So us on the
Yes.
East Coast, we're going to have to just make do. So one more
Yeah.
question. It was actually based on Shock and Awesome, who is in our audience. So Shock and Awesome actually leads a community of senior community members. Are there any tips for
Awesome.
senior members of the community that can help with gut health that may differ than maybe some of the younger community? Anything that caters to the seniors to keep gut health in check?
You know, same things that as everybody else, but I have to. Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble for mentioning brand names. Um, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm not very politically correct, so sorry to this company. For some reason, I've seen in the older community, they're convinced that Ensure is this amazing product and a great supplement. Now, I've heard that they've changed some of their recipes, so I have to say I haven't looked into it. But one of my concerns was with my patients that it wasn't high enough protein and there was a lot of sugar. And so, even my dad recently had mouth surgery, and he was couldn't eat solid foods and then he was gonna get Ensure. And I'm like, please don't get Ensure. It has too much sugar, which is inflammatory, is gonna affect your healing, and I want you to get something more with protein. So I would say, like, look at things that you're eating. Um, and try to adjust that and go for things that have a little higher protein. Now, actually, I just thought of something that's really interesting. As we age, we lose our taste buds. And
Mm.
so we start losing our sense of taste. And this is why, but sweet is one of the last things to go. So, this is why sometimes in people that are older, they tend to be drawn more to sweet because that's what they can taste. Which, unfortunately, we're gonna have to battle that, because like I just said, sugars are inflammatory, and so you don't want to add to any kind of chronic diseases, or even adding to the aging process. In the I do a lot also teaching for aesthetics, so and there's some products that actually rid the skin of the byproducts of sugar, because when we get these byproducts of sugar in our skin, it actually ages the skin. And so, if you think you're doing that to your skin, it's going to do that to the rest of your body too. So, that I don't have a great suggestion, other than once you start cutting out the added sugars, some of the natural sugars in foods will start to taste better. Our tongue becomes more sensitive to the natural sugars. Or, like I said, substituting maybe with stevia or monk fruit would be a better option. And or even just trying to use more spices, herbs and spices on the foods to get more of a taste. But that's a really good question. So thank you for bringing that up.
No, and
So.
thank you. One more thing I want to say. First of all, thank you so much for giving this presentation, this lecture, this Q&A session. This has been amazing. Everybody in the auditorium
Yes.
throwing confetti. I wish you could see them at home, but feel free to throw some confetti for yourself if you know what we're talking about. But confetti, and thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to share as kind of a final thought on whether it's leaky gut syndrome or gut health or anything in general, just to kind of close out your advice, recommendations, and then we'll go from there to where we can find you on social media?
Yeah, the biggest thing is we I call it the Dorothy, the red slipper syndrome. We all have the ability in our bodies to heal. And so a lot of times we're constantly looking outside of our bodies for answers or the next pill when our bodies want to heal, our bodies want to be in balance. So really taking the time to listen to what our bodies want and what it needs and really going inward. So, total health is like a three-legged stool: body, mind, and spirit. And if those three legs aren't equal, we're going to flop over. So, unfortunately, you know, going to the doctor, that's a tool. They can help you with the body, but nobody's going to nobody can sleep for you. Nobody can eat healthy for you. Nobody can exercise for you. Nobody can decrease stress but you. So, you have it within you to be healthy and be whole. So that's my biggest takeaway.
Amazing advice from an amazing doctor. Thank you so much for everything that you've done today. So, where can we find you online? Social media? Where is your practice? Anything you want to share with the people at home?
Yeah, so social media is going to be where you're going to be find me right now because I'm in the process of kind of mixing up some things with the practice. So my practice is not available right now, but social media, find me at Dr. Betsy Greenleaf _ on Instagram. Also, just look for me if you just look for me, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, you can find me most places. I have Facebook, I have TikTok, I have Instagram. I got everything that I can think of. I know there's new things coming out. It looks like starting next Tuesday, I'm going to be doing some office hours within this world. So you can find my virtual office here. I think we're doing it at 1 p.m. I'm doing it at 1 p.m. Eastern time, where I'll be available to answer any general questions. I can't answer specific questions because then that would be me practicing medicine in the metaverse, and I don't have a license to do that yet. But I can
Oh,
answer
that is
general questions if anybody wants to come visit me. Yeah, and I have podcasts. I have one called Body, Mind, Spirit that you can find at wytv.org or wherever you listen to podcasts. And I have another podcast called Some of Your Parts. That's a women's wellness podcast. I have a summit that's coming out, but I'm afraid to mention the name of it in the metaverse because of one of the words that's in the title has gotten me in trouble on Facebook because of going against community standards. So I don't want to mention the name of it, but you'll see it on my social media being advertised. So check out my summit that's coming out. It's free in June for people to come watch. So for women's health. So yeah, thank you.
that is incredible. I actually was just expecting Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but when do you sleep? You have all this going on, podcasts, and you're TikToking.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why the office is not open right now, is because I got a lot of other projects going on to get through before we do something with an office again. So
Incredible.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. You can find her on all those social medias, including TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, podcasts, and a whole lot more coming up, and office hours eventually in Horizon starting next Tuesday.
Yes.
Incredible. So thank you to everybody in the stream. Make sure if you're in VR, if you're able to get into Horizon Worlds, come check out the HouseCall VR hub. You can find all of the HouseCall worlds that you can visit. You can learn a lot about dermatology and so much more. And then, of course, you can check out Dr. Greenleaf on all the social medias to make sure you follow, like, subscribe, share, do all the things, and come back if you didn't get a chance to watch this live. You can watch this stream back anytime you'd like. So make sure you share that out as well. Thank you to Naviculara for hosting. Thank you to Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. Thank you to everybody in the auditorium who joined us in Horizon Worlds. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Oculus 410, and we will see y'all in Horizon. Bye now.